Welcome to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Monday, March 22nd, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well today. It's a very, very busy day, busy weekend, preparing for a TV interview on Tuesday. So you'll hear more about that at some point. So I'm going to deal with a couple of stories today and try to squeeze in this third one. We ran out of time on our Sunday show, the African History Network show on Sunday. Back on March 7th, I covered the story of Evanston, Illinois, and how Evanston, Illinois was going to become the first U.S. city to fund reparations for African Americans. Okay. And I did about an hour and a half on that topic. And it tied into reparations, not for slavery, but for redlining. And I went in depth into it because it made sense, because all the survivors of slavery are dead, but you still have survivors that are still alive who survived, who were victims of redlining. Well, the story broke today that the bill, that the proposal passed in the city council in Evanston, Illinois. Okay, so we're going to talk about that on today's show, give you an update on what took place there. And, you know, yesterday we dealt with the story of Henrietta Wood, who in 1870, Henrietta Wood sued for reparations, and it was litigated for 8 years, but she actually won. She sued for $2,500 and actually won $2,500 from her former master, okay, who captured her. She was free in Cincinnati and captured her, took her back into slavery, sold her into slavery into Texas. So we dealt with that story on our Sunday show. So go watch our March 21st, 2021 show, where we went deep into the history dealing with Henrietta Wood. And this ties into reparations as well. Now, she had some sense, even though she was a former slave, because she dealt with it legally. And this is what I've been saying for some time now. A lot of these arguments that are being made are not legal arguments. And when you go to lawmakers, you go to argue law. You don't go to argue morality. This is something that, unfortunately, people have good intentions but still don't understand. All right, so we'll talk about Evanston, Illinois, and then LA Lakers great Elgin Baylor passed away today, age 86. Elgin Baylor, the Lakers Hall of Fame forward, who became one of the NBA's greatest players, displaying acrobatic brilliance that foreshadowed the athleticism of later generations of stars, died on Monday, March 22nd, in Los Angeles. He was 86. His death at a hospital was announced on Twitter by the LA Lakers. The team did not specify a cause of death. So we'll talk some about Elgin Baylor as well. Okay. And then if we have time and want to, we didn't get a chance to talk about African-American restaurants that fed the civil rights movement on our Sunday show. We talked some about the March 21st was the 56th anniversary of the beginning of the Selma to Montgomery, the Selma to Montgomery March in Selma, Alabama, dealing with the fight for the Voting Rights Act in 1965. All right. So we talked about that on our Sunday show. And I was also going to deal with restaurants that served the civil rights activists during the civil rights movement, but we ran out of time. So we're going to try to squeeze that in on today's show. All right, now on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now it's correct wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events in history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter, text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter, also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Sign up for our email newsletter as well. Don't forget my online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. That meets Tuesdays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So this class is tomorrow, Tuesday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We deal with thousands of years of history, and we deal with what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. We deal with ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. We deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place, and we deal with the transatlantic slave trade also. All right, so it's an 8-week, 16-hour online course that I teach. We deal with thousands of years of history. This time around, this is the first time I've taught it since 2019. This time around is going to be 9 weeks, because we had 2 guest speakers, Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. He was a guest speaker 3 weeks ago in the class. And also we had Sister Nubia Wardford, who's a cultural anthropologist. She was a guest speaker in the class as well. We dealt with the origins of ancient Kush and the African queens of antiquity. All right, so you can register for the online course at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Also, I'm going to post a link here. Now, we do the class live because everybody asked this, and I think some people don't realize what I'm saying. All the sessions are recorded. We do the class live. People are in class live. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch the class over and over again. So if you can't be in class live, it's not a problem. You can watch from around the world also. You can ask questions during the class with the live text chat as well. So the class is regularly $130. It's on sale $80. As soon as you register, you can watch last week's class and the previous classes also. All right, so check that out. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, let's. I want to jump into this story here before we go to break. So Evanston, Illinois. Now, you've heard me talk about this before. And a lot of people were saying, oh, you know, what they were doing, what they were allocating for, what they were allocating for reparations. Oh, people were saying, oh, that's nothing, blah, 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 right? And some people say, oh, HR 40 is better. Problem with HR 40 is you can't get you haven't been able to get HR 40 passed in the House of Representatives since 1989. HR 40 was originally introduced in 1989. It hasn't gone anywhere. They can't get it passed in the House of Representatives. So Evanston, Illinois leads the country with first reparations program for Black residents. The nation's first government reparations program for African Americans was approved on Monday night, March 22nd, 2021, in the Chicago suburb of Evanston, Illinois, action that advocates say represents a critical step in rectifying wrongs caused by slavery, segregation, and housing discrimination, and in pushing forward on similar compensation efforts across the country, and in pushing forward similar compensation efforts across the country. All right. Now, on Sunday's show, there was another story I wanted to get to. We're going to try to squeeze it in today. It's from NBC News, NBCnews.com, and it deals with reparations. And it deals with how different cities across the country are trying to deal with Reparations, a price tag on trauma. A price tag on trauma. Massachusetts town weighs Black reparations. This is a story from March 10th, 2021 that I saw but haven't been able to get to deal with. And I was trying to tie it into the Henrietta Wood story from Sunday, but we ran out of time. Okay, so let's go back to the story here with Evanston, Illinois. Now, Ron Daniels, I know Dr. Ron Daniels, president of the National African American Reparations Commission, which wants redress at local and federal levels, said right now the whole world is looking at Evanston, Illinois. This is a moment like none other that we've ever seen, and it's a good moment. We'll deal with this on the other side of the break. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation of Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by, everybody. Stand by. How's everybody doing? Everybody share this broadcasting on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. How's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? Everybody stand by. Okay, we'll be back for break in just a minute here. Stand by. We'll be back for break in 2 minutes. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation of Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Monday, March 22nd, 2021, and we're live. Hope everybody's doing well. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. Almost said it was Sunday, but it's like, no, it's Monday. I'm used to being here 6 days a week now. It took me a while to get used to being here 6 days a week. I'm pretty used to it now. Okay, so right before the break, we were talking about the story that just happened in Evanston, Illinois, suburb of Chicago. And the city council has approved they approved a motion to approve the first phase of reparations to acknowledge the harm caused by discriminatory housing policies, practices, and inactions going back more than a century. Now, I talked about this story in depth back on March 7th. It was Sunday, March 7th. So go watch that show. You can watch all of our shows at the African History Network on Facebook, Michael Imhotep on YouTube, and if you visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, click on Listen to Podcasts on the homepage. We have audio podcasts of our shows there as well. So at the time that I dealt with this story on March 7th, they were in the process of trying to get the proposal passed through through city council. All right. Now, let's go back to this article here from the Washington Post. This is from March 22nd, 2021. So Dr. Ron Daniels, president of the National African American Reparations Commission, said of this development here, right now, the whole world is looking at Evanston, Illinois. This is a moment like none other that we've ever seen. And it is a good moment. I totally agree with Dr. Ron Daniels. I need to reach out to him, get him back on the show. I interviewed him back in 2016, leading up to the State of the Black World Conference that he does every 4 years. He should have to see when he's doing another one also. Now, the Evanston City Council approved the first phase of reparations to acknowledge the harm caused by discriminatory housing policies, practices, and inactions going back more than a century. The 8-to-1 vote will make $400,000 available in $25,000 home ownership and improvement grants, as well as in mortgage assistance for Black residents who can show they are direct descendants of individuals who lived in the city between 1919 and 1969. Okay, who can this is for African American residents who can show that they are direct descendants of individuals who lived in the city of Evanston, Illinois between 1919 and 1969. Now, we know 1919 is when you had the big race riot in Chicago. That's during the Red Summer. Okay. Now, once again, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. I want to go back to the well, let me continue here. We're gonna go to that clip. We're gonna go to clip 1 in just a second, Shakita, from ABC News. Now, the housing money is part of a larger $10 million package approved for continued reparations initiatives, which will be funded by income from annual cannabis taxes, marijuana sales, over the next decade. African American residents make up about 16% of Evanston's population of 75,000. All right, now you have some people who say, oh, this is not enough. Oh, we want HR 40, blah, blah, blah. Okay, they owe us $27 trillion, whatever it is. Okay, first of all, this is something I learned from Dr. Daryl Scott, history professor at Howard University. Let me explain something to you all. It doesn't matter how much you think you're owed. Only thing that matters is what you can actually collect. All those numbers people putting out, all that stuff. I read one study last year said we're owed $6 quadrillion. $6 quadrillion doesn't even exist. Then you have people who say, oh, HR 40 is better. We want HR 40. Okay. Now, some people say HR 40 is BS. No, it's not. Go read the damn bill. HR 40 is not BS. HR 40 is stronger under the 116th Congressional Congress than it was originally when John Conyers introduced it in 1989. The reason why you need a study on reparations and the impact that slavery and the legacy of slavery has had on African Americans, and then to provide remedies, then to provide suggestions on how to distribute reparations, is because Americans are woefully ignorant of history. And many of the people ignorant of history are the ones that got to vote on reparations. They're in the House of Representatives and they're in the U.S. Senate. If you study politics, you understand how stupid some of these people are. America needs a massive history lesson. All you got to do is look around and look at the Confederate battle flags and look at, you still got military, you still have military bases named after Confederate heroes. You still have schools named after Confederate generals and Confederate heroes. These were traitors to the Union. When you go look at we did a segment of the show that looked at the segment from CBS News. from January 19th, 2021. It showed how most people don't know what's in the U.S. Constitution. And these were white people that don't know what's in the U.S. Constitution. You had the study that came out April 4th, 2018, 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King from YouGov. Newsweek.com picked up the study. We talked about it right here. All this stuff we did were here. In the study, it showed that 40% of people, 40% of white people surveyed said African Americans could be as equally successful as white people if they just tried harder. This shows how ignorant people are of history. Okay, I'm going to pull up that study. We're going to go to this clip. We're going to pull up this study. See, most people can't tell you how to get reparations. Because I listen to the stuff people say about reparations. Then you got people who think the president can do an executive order to distribute reparations. Well, that means you ain't read the U.S. Constitution, because Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7 of the U.S. Constitution disagrees with you on that, because it clearly states that Congress controls the powers of the purse, which means it has to pass the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate before signing the law by a president. This is exactly why a lot of these discussions of reparations you don't see me involved in, because a lot of people don't know what the hell they're talking about, and I don't want to sit there arguing when people don't know what the hell they're talking about. If you can't tell me the actual process to get what it is you say you want, then I have to look at you. What are you talking about? So, Shakita, let's go to this clip. Now, this is from ABC News, and it's talking about Evanston, Illinois. This is back from this is from March 1st, 2021. Let's go to this clip, Shakita.
For the reparations? I will, yeah. Why?
Just back it up to the beginning. Just back it up to the beginning.
You apply for the reparations?
I will, yeah.
Why?
Because it's old.
This is my home. It's where I live. I love it. My people are here. This community was redlined historically, and that has come along with damages that continue today. Resources were stripped away from the Black community, and that stripped away a sense of place and wealth as well. We've been doing the work, and the work that we've done has not produced any relief in the racial disparities that we have. And it was appropriate that we do something radically different to make good on the commitment that we've made to the Black community. And reparations was the next thing for us to do.
I'm 98 years old.
We moved to Evanston in 1959.
The contractor said, so it's completely honest. You find a lot anywhere in Evanston, and I'll build whatever you want. Well, when he said that, he meant in the Black neighborhood. It was just the way it was. And as we speak, in 2021, we still have these same types of problems.
My hope is that families that are currently living here right now today that are burdened get some relief and build some wealth through our reparation program.
It certainly has started. If you look at housing prices today, that is down payment.
It's a drop in the bucket. You have denied me all my 98 years. Hopefully, before I die, I'll see the world change.
You get some reparations.
I get some reparations, right?
So
for you, this notion of reparations in Evanston isn't meant to be a drop in the bucket, but the beginning of a stream that becomes a river, that becomes an ocean.
When I introduced reparations in Evanston, it was always the first step of many to come. There is a lifetime of work ahead of me and my children for us to get to justice for the Black community. And I can't wait to celebrate the family that receives their first reparations benefit. I cannot wait for that day.
Okay, so that was a segment from ABC News, Soul of a Nation Seeking Reparations. That was, hold on just a second here. Okay, so that's dealing with Evanston, Illinois. And that was Robin Rue Simmons that you heard, Fifth Ward Alderman Robin Rue Simmons. The impetus for the city's reparations resolution first passed in 2019 and was spearheaded by Fifth Ward Alderman Robin Rue Simmons. And it's rooted partially in Robin Rue Simmons' experience growing up in Black Evanston, Illinois. Okay. She said, early in my childhood, I was invited to have a play date. She recalled my white friends never had a play date at my home. Visiting a white friend's neighborhood, she noticed the streets were wider, W-I-D-E-R. The trees were taller. The homes were bigger and brighter. As a young child, I recognized that difference. Okay. So that is, let's see, this is from March 1st, 2021, how the first U.S. city, and let's see, this is from ABC News. Let's pull up this article here also. How the first U.S. city to fund reparations for Black residents is making amends. Okay, so this story we dealt with March 7th on our March 7th, 2021 show. That was on Sunday, March 7th. And this is an update here. And this proposal has passed the city council there in Evanston, Illinois. Let me show you this article here from ABC News so you can read it in its entirety. Okay, and then we'll go to the news story from Washington Post. Okay, how the first U.S. city to fund reparations for Black residents is making amends. Up to $25,000 per eligible resident for housing will be distributed this year. Okay, once again, this is from March 1st, 2021. Okay. All right. Now, let's go to a couple things here. Then we'll go back to the article from the Washington Post, because it seems like we have some people, it's their first time watching the show. All right. First thing I encourage people to do is read the U.S. Constitution. Go to archives.gov or libraryofcongress.gov, loc.gov, read the U.S. Constitution. This is at history.house.gov. History.house.gov is the first official website of, house.gov is the official website of the House of Representatives. Senate.gov is the official website of the U.S. Senate. At both house.gov and senate.gov, they have a history section. This is from history.house.gov. This deals with power of the purse. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. It's Article 1, Section 7, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution. Okay. Now, if we look at power of the purse, no money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law and a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. This is Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7 of the U.S. Constitution that deals with the power of the purse. Reparations has to be paid out by the Treasury Department. The bill has to pass the House of Representatives first, then pass the U.S. Senate. Then it has to be signed into law by a president. That deals with the powers of the purse. That deals with the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7. Go read this. This is why a president can't do no damn executive order for reparations. Anybody telling you that is lying to you. Congress, in particular, the House of Representatives, is invested with the power of the purse, the ability to tax and spend public money for the national government. You don't have enough votes in the House of Representatives to pass H.R. 40. If you can't get a bill passed to study reparations in the House of Representatives, how the hell are you going to get a bill passed to pay reparations? Nobody wants to ask this question. Nobody wants to. This is why I hear people saying certain things. I'm like, do you really understand the process? And then you don't even have you're going to need 60 votes in the Senate. You don't even have 40. I doubt very seriously if you got 40 votes in the Senate for reparations. You only have 40 votes for a reparations study in the Senate. I doubt if you got 40 votes to pay reparations in the Senate, because there's going to be some Democrats that vote against that. Joe Manchin from West Virginia is not going to vote for reparations. Are you serious? Kristen Sinema from Arizona, she's not going to vote for reparations. I don't even think you have 40 votes in the Senate. We know the Black Tea Party Republican Tim Scott from South Carolina, he's not going to vote for reparations. How do we know? Because he already said he ain't voting for it. And he's black. If the black Republican is not going to vote for reparations, how many white Republicans you think are going to vote for reparations? You couldn't get a single Republican in the House or the Senate to vote for the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, and that was going to help a lot of white people, and they wouldn't vote for it. That would help a lot of white people that voted for these sorry-ass Republicans, and they wouldn't even vote for that. You think they're going to vote for reparations? I don't know what type of drugs you're using. The options, you need to stop using them. Let me put it like that. Whatever drug you're using that make you think that you're going to be able to get reparations passed, especially in the Senate, you need to stop using those drugs right away. Hopefully you can sue whoever the hell sold you that nonsense. Whoever sold you the drugs that you using that make you think you can get a reparations bill passed in the Senate. You know, hopefully maybe you get Benjamin Crump to file a class action lawsuit or something. Because I listen to the BS people say. I'm like, okay, whatever. These all right. Okay, this. You should have just kept your mouth shut on that one. But anyway, let's continue. All right, so let's go back to the new article. I'm serious. Some people don't really want to tell our people the truth. I told you before, I don't give a damn. I'll tell you the truth. A lot of people don't want to tell our people the truth. You have to actually deal with the actual process to get this stuff passed. If you ain't going to deal with that, just shut the hell up. All right, let's continue here. So we're looking at and then let me show you this one before I take it down. This goes back to April 4th, 2018, 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. This was a study, interesting study by a survey by YouGov. So the study was picked up by Newsweek, Newsweek.com, Newsweek magazine. 40% of whites think black people just need to try harder. Poll finds. April 4th, 2018, 50th anniversary of assassination of Dr. King. Everybody teary-eyed. Dr. King was a great man, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but you go look at what people said. Now, these white people were ones bold enough to actually admit it. I think it was probably more than 40% that think it. They just didn't want to admit it because it's maybe around the 50th anniversary of Dr. King. They didn't want to admit it. YouGov asked a number of questions on what it called racial resentment, one of which centered on whether the respondent agreed with the statement. Quote, it's really a matter of some people not trying hard enough. If blacks would only try harder, they could be just as well off as whites, end quote. Overall, 35% of respondents agreed, 16% strongly agreed, 19% somewhat with the statement, 28% neither agreed nor disagreed. 40% of white respondents agreed, 19% strongly, 21% somewhat, that black people just needed to try harder to be equal. You don't need reparations, you just need to try harder. They don't want to deal with the racial wage gap and how African-American women make 67% or 62% on the dollar that every white male makes, and it takes the average African-American woman 20 months to make the same amount of money that the average white man makes in 12 months. This is what Black women's equal pay day is about. They don't want to deal with nothing like that. They just try harder. Yeah, okay. So go read this one. All right, now let's go back to the I want to go back to the one from um, Washington Post. Okay, the new one from Washington Post. All right, and once again, name of that article. Everybody read this one. Evanston, Illinois leads the country with first reparations program for Black residents. Okay, so the Evanston City Council approved the first phase of the reparations to acknowledge the harm caused by discriminatory housing policies, practices, and inaction going back more than a century. The 8-to-1 vote will make $400,000 available in $25,000 home ownership. It will make $400,000 available in $25,000 home ownership and improvement grants, as well as in mortgage assistance for Black residents who can show they are direct descendants of individuals who lived in the city between 1919 and 1969. Now, the housing money is part of a larger $10 million package approved for continued reparations initiatives, which will be funded by income from annual cannabis taxes over the next decade. Black residents make up about 16% of Evanston, Illinois' population of 75,000 people. More than 60 people spoke before the vote, many endorsing the resolution and calling for the city to take the historic step, others criticizing it and pleading for more time to reshape the plan. Housing assistance, detractors said, isn't a credible form of reparations. Now, Robin Rue Simmons, who you heard in the segment from ABC News that we played a few minutes ago, Robin Rue Simmons said it's a first tangible step. And as she said all along, this is just the first step. It's this going. They want more to come. Okay, this is the first step. And now, as somebody that's actually been involved in writing public policy for the city of Detroit, I'm trying to tell y'all, all these grandiose ideas people have, most of them can't tell you how to get the stuff done. I almost cussed on live radio. Most of them can't tell you how to get the stuff done. Okay, at the end of the day, you get what you get whatever you can get. That's at the end of the day, after all is said and done. Okay, you get whatever you can actually get tangible. That's what you end up fighting for. Because a lot of times people want to get all this pie in the sky stuff and can't tell you realistically how to get it. It's a first tangible step, said Alderwoman Robin Rue Simmons, who represents the largely African American Fifth Ward and has been a prime force on the program. Quote, it is alone not enough. It is alone not enough. It is not full repair alone in this one initiative. But we all know that the road to repair injustice in the Black community will be a generation of work. I'm excited to know more voices will come to the process. Because okay, so for instance, I was reading the article before we came on the air. I was reading the article about this from CNN. And in the article from CNN, I encourage people to read this one also. This is from March 22nd. And I think this one from CNN was actually before the actual vote took place in city council. You had people complaining about it and saying the HR 40 is better and things like this. They didn't say you ain't been able to get HR 40 passed in 33 damn years in the House of Representatives. They ain't say that. City's upcoming vote underscores why debate over reparations for slavery is no longer a fringe issue. That's true. Okay. Problem is most people can't tell you how to legally get what it is they want. HR 40 was, let me just explain something to you. HR 40, all due respect to Honorable John Conyers, he fought a good fight. John Conyers from Detroit. We love John Conyers. Okay. John Conyers first introduced HR 40 in 1989. Listen to me. John Conyers first introduced HR 40 in 1989. I was a senior in high school. I'll be 50 in June of this year, and HR 40 still hasn't passed the House of Representatives. So how the hell are you going to say we want what's in a bill that you couldn't get passed in 33 damn years? We don't want this over here that we can actually get passed. We want this over here that hasn't gone anywhere in 33 years. Whoever you got those drugs from, you need to sue them. They sued and got millions of dollars for OxyContin. Whoever you got these drugs from, I'm trying to tell you, you need to sue them. This stuff makes no sense whatsoever. I'm all for HR 40. But at the end of the day, it ain't what you think that you owe, is what you can actually collect that matters. At the end, after all is said and done, it don't matter what you think you owe. It matters what you can collect. All right. So read this article from CNN. Okay. And the other thing, see, reparations is not, I doubt very seriously if reparations, like what we actually want, if it's going to be one massive bill. It's probably going to be a series of bills. So we have to keep that in mind as well. You know how many white people got to vote on this stuff? Are you serious? All right. So Alderwoman Robin Ruth Simmons said, but we all know that the road to repair injustice in the Black community will be a generation of work. I'm excited to know more voices will come to process. I'm excited to know more voices will come to the process. Now, the issue of reparations has been, so the article goes on to say, the issue of reparations has been raised nationally for decades, with supporters focusing not just on financial restitution for the descendants of enslaved Americans, but also on government's formal apologies for their role in that legacy. In the wake of anti-racism demonstrations that swept the country last summer after the police killings of George Floyd in Minneapolis and Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky, California established a task force to propose a model for reparations. Now, this is the article from NBC News I was going to try to squeeze in on Sunday's show when we're dealing with Henrietta Woods. It talks about the different efforts in different cities to deal with reparations. It's a good article from NBC News that they picked up from the Associated Press. I'll show it to you in a minute here. So California established a task force to propose a model for reparations. Chicago and several other cities are discussing reparations programs of their own. Historian Jennifer Oast, O-A-S-T, I think that's how you pronounce it, an expert on institutional slavery at Bloomsburg University in Pennsylvania, expects that the Evanston, Illinois program in particular will have a snowball effect on proposed federal legislation. Let's hope so. You're still going to need, now, here's one thing people don't understand about HR 40. You have to understand the difference between a House bill, a House resolution, and a House joint resolution. Unfortunately, most people don't understand the difference. HR 40 is not, even though we call it a bill, it's not actually a bill, it's a House resolution. It deals with procedures only within the House of Representatives. If it was actually a bill that was going to be signed into law, it would be called HB 40. It's not HB 40, it's HR 40. This is why you have to understand the rules of the House of Representatives and the actual process of a bill being signed into law. HR 40 doesn't have to go to the U.S. Senate. It's a resolution to study reparations, to create a commission to study reparations and deal with the impact of slavery and legacy of slavery on African Americans, and then make recommendations for reparations. To actually pay out or disseminate or distribute reparations, there's going to be a HB, that's going to be a House bill. It's going to have to pass the House. It takes 218 votes to pass any bill in the House of Representatives. You don't have 218 votes to even pass a bill to study reparations. How are you going to pass a bill to pay reparations? Then you're going to need 60 votes in the Senate. 60 votes don't even exist in the Senate. You're going to need Republicans to vote for that. It's only 50 Democrats in the damn Senate. That's including Senator Angus King of Maine and Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, because they caucus with the Democrats. There's only 50. You still need 10 Republicans. Where are you going to get that from? So in different municipalities, people are saying, look, we're going to try to do what we can do at the local level. While they try to work that out at the federal level, we're going to try to do what we can do at the local level. I'm all for that. At the end of the day, it don't matter what you think you owe. What matters is what you can collect and where you can collect it from. Okay. So let's go back to this here. We're almost out of time here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF. Those watching on Facebook and YouTube, on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. Keep watching. We're going to keep broadcasting for a few more minutes. So historian Jennifer Ost, an expert on institutional slavery at Bloomsburg University in Pennsylvania, expects that the Evanston program in particular will have a snowball effect on proposed federal legislation. That measure, H.R. 40, there it is, H.R. House Resolution 40, would create a national commission to study potential reparations. You need that because America needs a massive history lesson, including the people in that, especially the dumbasses in the House of Representatives. Oh my God. Like the 146 Republicans that voted not to certify election results because they want to overturn the election results. Those idiots and the people that voted for them need a massive history lesson. Now, it was introduced in 2019, H.R. 40, the revised H.R. 40 was introduced in 2019, but largely languished under last year's presidential race when two key candidates, Senator Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, voiced support for H.R. 40. Keep in mind, see, Mitch McConnell, when he was Senate Majority Leader, he said reparations was dead on arrival in the Senate, and Donald Trump is against reparations. Donald Trump was attacking the 1619 project. You think this is why when people said, this is why when I did the show March 7th, we called it reparations how. People say reparations now. My response to the people who say reparations now is hashtag reparations how. Explain to me how you're going to get it. We're going to continue this for a few minutes more. We're out of time here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace. Stand by. Okay. How's everybody doing? All right. So you see, this is a different type of show. We deal with facts and evidence here. All that other BS, I don't have time for that. How's everybody doing? Share this broadcasting on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. You don't have to believe a word that I say. Proper documentation ends all conversation. That's why I show you these articles. I give you these articles. Go research this yourself. You don't have to believe me. Okay? If you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network. Also, $ the AHN Show through Cash App. $ the AHN Show through Cash App. Also through PayPal. PayPal.me/the AHN Show. We're here 6 days a week, 6 nights a week. This helps us to keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills, pay for some of these services also. So we're going to continue with this article. We'll talk a little bit about Elgin Baylor, and we'll deal with Elgin Baylor on tomorrow's show also. Okay, so I could tell you all now, because we're off 910. I didn't want to announce it on 910. Tuesday, they're going to re-air an episode on 910 AM Superstation because I'll be a guest on Fox Soul TV on the Tammy Mack Late Show. The Tammy Mack Late Show on Fox Soul TV. It's a national show. So I'll be a guest on there. It airs 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I think it is Pacific. 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So they're going to re-air episode of the African History Network show on 910 AM Superstation because I won't be there because I'll be on the Tammy Mack show. Okay. But I didn't want to say it on the air. I already told them I couldn't do the show Tuesday, but I didn't want to say it on the air because we want people to listen to we want people to listen to 910. All right. Let's see here. Okay. But Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be doing my online class, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa. Understand the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, so this is a 8-week, 16-hour online course that I teach. We do it live. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. Yeah, sharing that. Yeah, well, we'll still have class, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We posted the link here. You can register for the class. Yeah, class will still be Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I would definitely have to get out at 10 because I got to get ready to do Tammy's show. All right, let's get to you. And you can go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Right on the homepage of our, we got the information there around the homepage also. All right, let's continue. But we posted the link here. All right, let's continue with the article. So they were talking about HR 40 and a house in Joe Biden's 22-page agenda to Empower Black America that we talked about numerous times on this show leading up to the November 3rd election. On page 22 of his 22-page agenda, he talks about support for HR 40 as well. Now, a House Judiciary Subcommittee held a hearing on the bill last month. We talked about that a little bit here on the show. That was in February 2021. The bill has 173 sponsors in the House of Representatives, but Dr. Ron Daniels projects that number going toward 190. Now, here's the thing. Now, see, this is what I'm trying to explain to people. It takes 218 votes to pass any bill in the House of Representatives. Democrats control the House of Representatives. They got 173 people supporting it. That means all the Democrats don't even support this. How many Republicans you think support this? If you can't get a bill passed to study reparations, how the hell you get one passed to pay reparations? America needs a massive history lesson to move the needle, to push the agenda, and you got to vote more of the right people into the House of Representatives and the Senate and vote people out of office that are blocking the bills, especially Republicans, that are blocking the bills that are beneficial to us. So the bill has 173 sponsors in the House, but Daniels projects that number going toward 190, which makes it likely to pass if you get 218. It faces a much bigger challenge in the Senate. If you need 218 votes in the House, okay. So if you go toward 190, okay, you still gonna need like 28 more to get to 218. Now, while White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki has not said whether President Joe Biden would sign the legislation into law, because we don't know what the recommendation would be from the congressional committee, what their actual recommendation would be for reparations. We have no idea what their actual recommendation would be for reparations. I don't even know what their recommendation would actually be. So while White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki has not said whether President Joe Biden would sign the legislation into law, she noted in late February that, quote, he continues to demonstrate his commitment to take comprehensive action to address systemic racism that persists today. And obviously having that study is part of that, end quote. Okay, so here's a picture of 5th Ward Alderman Robin Rue Simmons of Evanston, Illinois. Okay, and all her black girl magic. Now, federal reparations advocates. Federal reparations are advocates' ultimate goal because of the greater monetary resources that would become available coming from the federal government as opposed to just from city or county or state governments. Yet local reparations are important because cities such as Evanston, Illinois, can, quote, serve as a blueprint, end quote, according to Dr. Ron Daniels. Now, other reparations programs have been created for specific injustices in 2000. So, for instance, in 2016, for example, Chicago passed a law to allocate $5.5 million for 57 torture victims of a police unit led by a disgraced former commander. Okay. And just last week, the Jesuit Order of Catholic Priests announced that it would raise $100 million for 5,000 living descendants of enslaved people, enslaved Africans, it owned 2 centuries ago. Now, figuring out how to build reparation programs that address redlining and segregation from the past century is much different than those designed to bring redress for the transatlantic slave trade, Professor Ost said, primarily because individuals from the Jim Crow and civil rights era are still alive and can directly benefit. See, this is what I'm talking about here. This is why this was good strategy of Evanston, Illinois, to focus on redlining as opposed to slavery. One of the things that people don't understand is that you want to make sure that your argument is on a strong legal foundation so that you can defend against challenges in court and actually win. So instead of trying to get reparations for slavery, and all the people who survived slavery are dead, the last known survivors of slavery died in the 1950s. Well, you still got people alive who were victims of redlining in Evanston, Illinois. Okay, in the clip we played from ABC News, one gentleman, he's 98 years old. He's still alive. So they're gonna go after the low-hanging fruit. Say, wait a second, we're gonna go after redlining. We still have people who are alive and can prove that they are descendants of people who were victims of redlining between 1919 and 1969. This is why this is why their approach is so brilliant. And a lot of people are not focusing on this. They're trying to chase something they can't get. Like a dog chasing his tail. I wonder, why must I feel like that? Why must I chase the cat? You know, it's like a dog chasing his tail. Why does a dog chase his tail? A dog that chases his tail would get dizzy. So primarily because individuals from the Jim Crow and civil rights era are still alive and can directly benefit. And Evanston, Illinois should be considered the prototype because of how the city approached its initiative, said Cam Howard of the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. And I've interviewed Cam Howard before. I know Cam. I need to reach out to Cam. I've been meaning to reach out to Cam because I want to talk to him about the HR 40 hearing that took place. I need to make a note of that also. All right. So Cam Howard said, quote, most other commissions file resolutions and then allocate funds for them, but Evanston, Illinois set aside the resources up front. Evanston, Illinois set aside the resources up front. End quote. Now, city leaders decided to first address housing following a report last year, 2020, that showed how, starting with the arrival of the first African-American resident in 1855, Evanston, Illinois restricted where African-Americans could live. Starting with the arrival of the first African-American resident in 1855, Evanston, Illinois restricted where African-Americans could live. Quote, over the decades, policies, practices, and patterns of discrimination and segregation took place, the report said. Together, they, quote, not only impacted the daily lives and well-being of thousands of Evanston, Illinois residents, but they also had a material effect on occupations, education, wealth, and property. So they're not just dealing with redlining, they're dealing with the effects of redlining and how this impacted people's quality of life, how this impacted the jobs that they had, and where you live, the zip code you live in largely determines the type of health care you have, the type of services you have. It determines largely the quality of food you have, unless you grow your food yourself. It largely determines your zip code, determines all of that. It largely determines the type of education your children are going to have, and the type of education your children are going to have largely then determines the type of college they go to, or if they go to college or not, and largely determines the quality of life, the type of careers they have, and the quality of life they will have for their children. So this is why I said the way they did this, man, this is brilliant. But this is understanding strategy. All right, how's everybody doing? We have Marie Osadian. We have let's see who else we have here. Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Sharon, Ruby, there's a few people watching. All right, and then also, like I said, through Cash App, if you donate through Cash App, be sure to type in $TheAHNShow. $TheAHNShow if you donate through Cash App, because it's going to show up. It'll say $TheAHNShow. It'll say Michael, and it'll show my picture there, because somebody set up a fake African History Network Cash App account. That's not me. Okay, mine is $TheAHNShow. That's the actual handle, and it says Michael, and it shows my picture there. It actually shows me in the radio station studio. That's how you know it's me. All right, let's continue. Let's go back to this. Then I'm going to show you some information dealing with redlining to actually break down what redlining is. Okay, so over the decades, policies and practices, the patterns of discrimination and segregation took place, the report said. Together, they not only impacted the daily lives and well-being of thousands of Evanston residents, but they also had a material effect on occupations, education, wealth, and property. All right. So let's look at what happened. Let me back up for a second. City leaders decided to first address housing following a report last year that showed, starting with the arrival of the first Black resident in 1855, Evanston restricted where Blacks could live. So what directed how they went about this was a report. It was a study. So they're going based upon the facts and the evidence to make their argument. This is why HR 40 is so important, if you can eventually get it passed, because you need a congressional study. Not only do you need a congressional study, you have to have a congressional hearing to present the results of the study to not just Congress, but also America, because Americans are woefully ignorant of history. This is why this study here from the Southern Poverty Law Center is so important, that you hear me talk about a lot, and I deal with this in the class that I teach, the online class, Teaching Hard History, American Slavery, Teaching Hard History, American Slavery. Now, you can download this. It's a free study. It's about a 56-page study. The study documents how the history of slavery is largely incorrectly taught in schools all across the country. And then it makes numerous recommendations of how to more correctly teach that history. And part of the study was an online survey of 1,000 high school seniors to determine what they knew about the history of slavery. And they knew very little. When you read page 9 of the study, the executive summary, it talks about how only 8% of high school seniors surveyed could identify slavery as the central cause of the U.S. Civil War. Only 8%. 8. Not 80, 8. 2/3 or 68% of high school seniors surveyed, and they surveyed 1,000. 2/3, 68%, did not know that it took a constitutional amendment to formally end slavery. That's the 13th Amendment. A lot of them thought it was the Emancipation Proclamation, January 1st, 1863. Emancipation Proclamation didn't end slavery. It wasn't the Emancipation Proclamation. Fewer than 1 in 4 students, or 22%, could correctly identify how provisions in the U.S. Constitution gave advantages to slaveholders. Oh, you mean like Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the U.S. Constitution, known as the Three-Fifths Compromise of 1787? The Three-Fifths Compromise that determined representation in the House of Representatives, and it was determining how do you count the enslaved population in these slaveholding states, and it said they would count 3/5 of the population for the purpose of taxation and apportionment. But also that gave how you decide to count the slave population in slaveholding states, also gave the slaveholding states an advantage in electoral college votes. That contributed to the electoral college, which contributes to determining the president. Because you take the number of seats in the House of Representatives a state has, you add to that the number of U.S. senators a state has. Every state has 2 U.S. senators based upon the Constitution. The House of Representation, the House of Representatives, is based upon population. So you take the number of seats in the House of Representatives that a state has, you add to that the number of seats in the U.S. Senate a state has, and that tells you how many electoral college votes a state has. Well, Virginia was the largest slaveholding state, like 1800 when Thomas Jefferson won presidency. And Virginia had 12 electoral college votes associated with the state because Virginia was the largest slaveholding state. That gave them an advantage in the U.S. House of Representatives and in the Electoral College. All of this is connected. This goes back to the U.S. Constitution as well. And then when we look at the fugitive slave laws of like 1793 and 1850, that's based upon Article 4, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution. All right, let's continue. So when you have the high school seniors that don't know this, it's a good chance their parents don't know it either. Otherwise, their parents probably would have taught them some of this. So it's a good chance their parents don't know it either. Which is why America needs a massive history lesson. Okay, let's continue. So we're going to wrap this up. So what they did was they used that study as a roadmap. Then when you look at North Carolina, when North Carolina paid out reparations for their survivors of their state-sponsored eugenics program, we talked about this here on this show a few years ago. Okay, from like about 1929 to 1970s, North Carolina had a sterilization program as well as other states. There's about 31 state-sponsored eugenics programs, okay, across the country. They were doing 4 sterilizations on people. And let's see here. Let's look at this. I think this is the right article here. Yeah, this is the right one. So go research this one. We're just going to deal with this briefly. But I talked about this here on the show because I've been doing radio 11 years. I talked about this here on the show when this happened and leading up to it happened. Victims of forced sterilization to receive $10 million from North Carolina. Victims of forced sterilization to receive $10 million from North Carolina. This is from July 25th, 2013. Okay. In a landmark move by the state of North Carolina, lawmakers passed a budget that includes $10 million to compensate the state's victims of forced sterilization. Now, this is Speaker of the State House, Tom Tillis, Republican, at the time, Speaker of the State House of Representatives there in North Carolina, okay, who's now a U.S. Senator for North Carolina. Tom Tillis said, there were challenges he said, there were challenges. We had to better educate our members. We had to better educate our members, the members of the state legislature. And then, of course, we had to work through the fiscal challenges. But at the end of the day, what we've done is something truly historic. Now, so what he's saying is in North Carolina, they had to educate members of the state legislature of what happened in North Carolina, why it happened, and why you should pay reparations to the survivors. Now, this is in North Carolina, and they had to do an education. They had to do an education of people in the state legislature. Well, the same thing has to happen to people in the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. And America needs a massive history lesson. Now, from 1929 to 1974, North Carolina forcibly sterilized thousands of men, women, and children, usually without their consent. It was part of a larger eugenics movement that believed poverty, promiscuity, and alcoholism were inherited traits, and that without them, the gene pool could be improved. Okay, now Elaine Riddick, who I know, we're Facebook friends, and Elaine Riddick is featured in the documentary Maafa 21 from Life Dynamics, and director Mark Crutcher, came out back in about 2010. Elaine Riddick was raped and impregnated at 13 years old. And after giving birth to her son, Tony, she was sterilized against her will. Afterwards, she lived for years in shame, but had something to prove. Okay. People need to know that injustice was done towards them, and they need to be compensated for that. Elaine Riddick, who was profiled by NBC News Rock Center with Brian Williams in November 2011. I saw the actual program on Rock Center on NBC News with Brian Williams in 2011 when it aired, and he interviewed Elaine Riddick. They have a link here where you can watch the video. So I was following this for years. In North Carolina, they were the first state to apologize for the state-sponsored eugenics program and to pay reparations. There were about 31 state-sponsored eugenics programs from the late 1920s going into the 1970s. Then when you look at Fannie Lou Hamer was sterilized in Mississippi. She was a victim of the state-sponsored eugenics sterilization program in Mississippi. All right, let's see here. Where are we? Okay, read the rest of the article here from Evanston, Illinois, because we're going to get out of here soon. I'm going to share this information quickly on redlining. We'll talk about Elgin Baylor for a minute. We'll talk about Elgin Baylor later this week. Evanston, Illinois leads the country with first reparations program for Black residents. Okay, this is something monumental here. This is from the Washington Post. So check out this article. We'll post a link here. March 22nd, 2021. Remember where you heard it first. Very quickly, redlining. What is redlining? What's the history of redlining? Here's some information from blackpast.org. Blackpast.org has about 6,000 pages of history dealing with, of articles dealing with African history, African American history. Blackpast.org. This deals with redlining, 1937. Okay, and I've talked about this before. Let's look at this quickly here. So redlining comes from the federal government, comes from the Homeowners Loan Corporation, created in 1933. Redlining refers to a discriminatory pattern of disinvestment and obstructive lending practices that act as an impediment to home ownership among African Americans and other people of color. Banks use the concept to deny loans to homeowners and would-be homeowners who lived in these neighborhoods. This in turn resulted in neighborhood economic decline and the withholding of services or their provision at an exceptionally high cost. Now, the origin of the term redlining stems from the policies developed by the Homeowners Loan Corporation, the HOLC, Homeowners Loan Corporation, created during the Great Depression by the President Franklin Roosevelt administration, created in 1933. The Homeowners Loan Corporation was created to reduce home foreclosures during the Great Depression and then institutionalized by the 1937 U.S. Housing Act, which established the Federal Housing Association, the FHA. And this was giving low interest loans to white people to buy houses, things like this, and avoid foreclosures, okay, like the HOLC, Homeowners Loan Corporation. Federal housing agencies including the HOLC and the Federal Housing Association determine whether areas were deemed unfit for investment by banks, insurance companies, savings and loan associations, and other financial service companies. The areas were physically demarcated or outlined with red shading on a map. In contrast, zones which were to receive preferential lending status were marked in green shading and intermediate areas in blue shading. Oftentimes, these decisions were arbitrarily based on the area's racial composition rather than income levels. While the practice was almost universal before 1968, the Civil Rights Act, which was the Fair Housing Act of 1968, passed that year, theoretically outlawed redlining. Nonetheless, its impact was felt long after that date. In a Pulitzer Prize-winning, in a series of Pulitzer Prize-winning articles, which appeared in 1988 under the title "The Color of Money," Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporter Bill Detman described how Atlanta, Georgia banks still discriminated by the racial designation of neighborhoods. His article illustrated how these banks were nearly twice as likely to lend to homeowners and prospective home buyers in low-income white neighborhoods as in affluent black neighborhoods. Okay, so read the rest of this. And now this ties into also African-American households or African-American homes being valued at $156 billion less than comparable white homes. Okay, this was a study from the Brookings Institute from I think 2018 or 2019, I think it was. Study from the Brookings Institute. Now, we talked about this here on the show before, and see if we can pull this up quickly. I don't have the article in front of me on that one. Let me see here. Which one was that? See, all this is connected. See, racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Okay, look at this. Brookings.edu, the devaluation of assets in black neighborhoods. Okay, it's from 2018. And Ali Velshi talked about this on MSNBC. He interviewed Andre Perry from the Brookings Institute. So we've shared that here on the show before. The devaluation of assets in black neighborhoods, the case for residential property. Let me see, this is the right one. Yeah, okay. Through the prism of the real estate market and home ownership in black neighborhoods, this report attempts to address the question, what is the cost of racial bias? This report seeks to understand how much money majority black communities are losing in the housing market stemming from racial bias, finding that owner-occupied homes in black neighborhoods are undervalued by $48,000 per home on average, amounting to $156 billion in cumulative losses. So there are African-American homes, and usually for African-Americans, our homes are our largest investment. Our homes are undervalued by $156 billion, which then ties into a loss of wealth. Okay, so read this full article here. The devaluation of assets in black neighborhoods, the case of residential property. That's from the Brookings Institute. Okay, and then you can read this other article here from npr.org. We talked about it before. I'm not going to have time to get into it right now. This deals with a forgotten history of segregation. A lot of people think segregation was just people wanted to live where they wanted to live, or African Americans just want to live with African Americans, things like this. This deals with a forgotten history of how the U.S. government segregated America and the laws that were used to do it, the redlining laws, etc. A forgotten history of how the U.S. government segregated America. May 3rd, 2017, by Terry Gross for NPR.org, National Public Radio. And very briefly here, in 1933, faced with a housing shortage, the federal government began a program explicitly designed to increase and segregate America's housing stock. Author Richard Rothstein says the housing programs begun under the New Deal under President Roosevelt were tantamount to a state-sponsored system of segregation, The government's efforts were, quote, primarily designed to provide housing to white middle class, lower middle class families, he says. African Americans and other people of color were left out of the new suburban communities and pushed instead into urban projects. Richard Rothstein's new book, The Color of Law, examines the local, state, and federal housing policies that mandated segregation, the local, state, and federal housing policies that mandated segregation. He notes that the Federal Housing Administration, the FHA, which was established in 1934, a federal government agency, furthered the segregation efforts by refusing to insure mortgages in and near African American neighborhoods, a policy known as redlining. At the same time, the Federal Housing Association was subsidizing builders, or Federal Housing Administration was subsidizing builders who were mass producing entire subdivisions for white people, with the requirement that none of the homes be sold to African Americans. That's known as a restrictive covenant. Okay, so read this rest of this article here. A forgotten history of how the U.S. government segregated America. So this goes back to the 40% of white people that said African Americans could be equally as successful as white people if they just tried harder. They don't want to deal with any of this. They don't want to deal with any of this history of racism and discrimination. They don't want to deal with any of that. It's not about trying harder. It's about having a level playing field. Very quickly here. So Elgin Baylor, the famed LA Laker, former LA Laker, passed away Monday, age 86. Lakers legend Elgin Baylor. We'll talk about him some more later this week. New York Times is a good article on this. Also, there was one from CBS Los Angeles. Elgin Baylor, the Lakers Hall of Fame forward who became one of the NBA's greatest players, displaying acrobatic brilliance that foreshadowed the athleticism of later generations of stars, died on Monday in Los Angeles. He was 86 years old. Let me see if I can pull this article up here. Just a second here. Where's that one? Okay, we'll do this one here. Okay, so he was 86 years old. In his 14 seasons with the LA Lakers. Hold on just a second here. So in his 14 seasons with the LA Lakers, first in Minneapolis, but mostly in Los Angeles, with another pair of Hall of Famers, Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain, as teammates. Elgin Baylor played with a creative flourish that had never been seen before in pro basketball. Played with a creative flourish that had never been seen before in pro basketball. Let's I want to pull up the one from the New York Times. Okay, and here's a picture of him actually playing back in the day. Elgin Baylor maneuvering between Bill Bradley left and Dick Barnett of the Knicks during the 1970 NBA Finals. You could not stop Elgin from driving to the basket, said Oscar Robertson. Oscar Robertson wrote this. Oscar Robertson said. Okay. So he was only 6'5", relatively short for a forward, even then, but he played above the rim when he soared toward the basket. His ability to twist and turn in midair on his way to the hoop previewed the freewheeling shows put on by stars like Julius Erving, Dr. J, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, and LeBron James. When Elgin Baylor arrived in the NBA in 1958, an All-American out of Seattle University, the pros usually scored on one-handed set shots or running hook shots. Elgin Baylor added a new dimension. Quote, you cannot stop Elgin from driving to the basket, the Hall of Fame guard Oscar Robertson recalled in his autobiography, The Big O, which came out in 2010. He went on to say, you sure couldn't outjump him or hang in the air any longer than he did. Elgin was the first and original high flyer, Oscar Robertson said. Now, Elgin Baylor's sturdy 225-pound frame complemented his finesse. He could muscle his way to the basket, and he followed up missed shots by maneuvering to score over bigger players. He was also an outstanding rebounder and passer. Elgin Baylor was voted to the NBA he was voted to the All NBA team for the league's first 50 years. He was a 10-time NBA first team All-Star selection and averaged more than 30 points a game for 3 consecutive seasons in the 1960s. There's another picture of him here. Driving to the hoop against Tom Sanders of the Boston Celtics, the Lakers' perennial nemesis in the 1962 championship series Boston won, as it so often did, against the Lakers. Now, Elgin Baylor set a league record by scoring 64 points against the Boston Celtics in November 1959. Then scored 71 points against the Knicks in November 1960. So he scored 64 points against the Boston Celtics in November 1959 and 71 points against the Knicks in November 1960, only to see Wilt Chamberlain score 100 points for the Philadelphia Warriors against the Knicks in March 1962. Now, Elgin Baylor joined with Jerry West and later Wilt Chamberlain to turn the LA Lakers into a glamour team. He played in 8 NBA Final Series, but the Lakers lost 7 times to the Celtics in the Bill Russell era, then to the Knicks in a memorable Game 7 at Madison Square Garden in 1970. He was elected to the Basketball Hall of Fame in 1977, but Elgin Baylor had little success when he turned to coaching and front office positions. He coached 3 losing teams with the New Orleans Jazz, which are now the Utah Jazz, in the 1970s, and later spent 22 mostly frustrating seasons as the general manager of the Los Angeles Clippers. I remember him as general manager of the Los Angeles Clippers. In the days when the NBA's TV coverage was limited, Elgin Baylor had never viewed a pro game before he played in one. In the days when the NBA's TV coverage was limited, Baylor had never viewed a pro game before he played in one. Quote, "I had never seen anyone else do my moves," end quote, he told Terry Pluto in the NBA oral history Tall Tales, which came out in 1992. He said, "It starts with talent. You have to be able to jump. It starts with talent. You have to be able to jump. But more than that, things I did were spontaneous. I had the ball. I reacted to the defense." And he had a nervous facial twitch that sometimes made defenders think he was setting off in one direction only to find him heading in the other direction. As the center, John Kerr, Kerr, Johnny Kerr, put it, "You didn't know if it was a head fake or what was going on." Now, Elgin, he was born September 16th, 1934. His full name is Elgin Gay Baylor, G-A-Y. Elgin Gay Baylor was born in Washington on September 16th, 1934. He was a high school basketball star, then played for 1 season at the College of Idaho and 2 seasons at Seattle University, leaving his team as a senior in 1958. Leaving his team as a senior to the 1958 NCAA tournament final, leading his team as a senior to the 1958 NCAA tournament final, a loss to Kentucky. Now, the Minneapolis Lakers selected Elgin Baylor as the league's overall #1 pick in 1958. He took them to the 1959 NBA Final Series, where he averaged nearly 25 points a game in a losing cause, the Lakers being swept by the Celtics. He was named Rookie of the Year that year. The Lakers moved to Los Angeles in 1960, the year Jerry West arrived to provide an outside game to go with Elgin Baylor's all-around skills. Baylor was eventually hampered by knee surgery that diminished his spring, the spring in his jump, but he remained an offensive force. He retired after his injuries limited him to 2 games in 1970 and 1971, but just 9 at the outset of the 1971-1972 season, when the Lakers went on to defeat the Knicks for the championship. Now, Jerry West recalled in his memoir entitled West by West, which came out in 2011, he said, winning the championship was marred for me by the sad, conspicuous absence of Elgin Baylor. Quote, the guy that shared all the blood, sweat, and tears wasn't there to realize what it felt like. Elgin Baylor averaged 27.4 points and 13.5 rebounds for his career and played in 11 All-Star games. He was fired as the Utah Jazz coach in 1979. He became the head of basketball operations for the LA Clippers, essentially their general manager in 1986. So he struggled with the Clippers, 22 seasons with the Clippers also. Now, the Clippers made the playoffs only 4 times in Baylor's tenure, which ended before the 2008-2009 season opened. The Clippers said he had resigned, but he filed a lawsuit in March 2009 against the Clippers owner, Donald Sterling. Remember Donald Sterling, okay? Donald Sterling and the NBA, maintaining that he had been fired as a result of age and racial discrimination. The lawsuit contended that Donald Sterling had described Elgin Baylor as a quote-unquote token, and that he had wanted the team to be composed of, quote, poor black kids from the South, end quote. Poor black kids from the South with a white head coach. That sounds like something Donald Sterling would say, but you know, I'm not saying he said it, but it does sound like something Donald Sterling would say. Now, the NBA was accountable, according to the lawsuit, because league officials knew of a large salary disparity between other general managers and Elgin Baylor, who's African American. A jury decided in the Clippers' favor, concluding that Elgin Baylor had lost his job because of the team's poor showings. But in April 2014, the NBA imposed a lifetime ban on Donald Sterling shortly after a recording obtained by TMZ caught him making racist comments in a conversation with a female acquaintance. We all remember that. I interviewed Dr. Francis Cress Wilson about that. We all remember that. The team was sold to businessman Steve Ballmer in August 2014. Elgin Baylor is survived by his wife Elaine, a daughter Crystal, 2 children from a previous marriage, Alan and Allison, and a sister, Gladys Baylor Barrett. Long after Elgin Baylor's playing days ended, his reputation endured. Tom Heinsohn, Heinsohn, the Hall of Fame forward for the Boston Celtics, that bested Elgin Baylor's Lakers, marveled at his feats. He said Elgin Baylor as a forward beats out Larry Bird, Julius Erving, and everybody else. Heinsohn told Ronald Lazenby in his autobiography, Roland Lazenby, in the autobiography in the biography Jerry West, it came out in 2009, referring to Larry Bird for the Celtics. He said, quote, he had the total game, defense, offense, everything, rebounding, passing the ball. So check out the rest of this from New York Times. Elgin Baylor, acrobatic Hall of Famer in NBA, dies at 86. Okay, so he's one of the greats. Foreshadowing the likes of Michael Jordan, he was a star with the glamorous Lakers and was voted to the All-NBA team for the league's first 50 years. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. Turn on notifications so you know when we go live. If you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App. Then also through PayPal, paypal.me/TheAHNShow, paypal.me/TheAHNShow. When you do it through Cash App, be sure to type in $ the AHN show, SHOW, and it'll say Michael, and it'll show my picture there also. Okay. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Remember, the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. We're kind of forever, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace. Thanks for tuning in.